Welcome to Shadow Frames, where forgotten images reveal their darkest secrets. Tonight, we explore a seemingly innocent photograph that has recently surfaced among the personal effects of the Winfield family estate. A Christmas Eve portrait from 1902, yellowed with age but remarkably well preserved, capturing a moment of apparent Victorian holiday bliss. The photograph shows the Winfield family gathered in their parlor, posed formally yet comfortably around an elegantly decorated Christmas tree. Father Edmund stands proud in his finest suit, one hand resting on the shoulder of his seated wife, Margaret, whose silk dress catches the light of nearby oil lamps. Their three children, Victoria, Edward, and young Thomas, are arranged in height order beside the tree, faces solemn yet content in the tradition of period photography. The room itself speaks of modest wealth. Velvet drapes frame frost-kissed windows, and carefully wrapped packages rest beneath the tree's lowest branches. Tinsel glimmers despite the photograph's age, and delicate glass ornaments catch what must have been the warm glow of candlelight. A traditional scene of the era, nothing immediately unusual to the casual observer. Yet something about this image has disturbed those who've studied it with modern technology. When digital enhancement techniques were applied to the photograph last month, previously invisible details emerged from the shadows beneath the Christmas tree, behind the neatly stacked presents. What initially appeared to be merely the dark space beneath pine branches revealed something else entirely. A face. Not a child's face playing hide and seek, but something gaunt and watchful. The enhanced image shows hollow eye sockets and what appears to be an unnaturally wide grin, partially obscured by the tree's lowest branches, but unmistakably present. Most disturbing is what historical records tell us about the Winfield family after this photograph was taken. By New Year's Day, 1903, merely 1 week later, the entire household had perished in what newspapers of the time described as a family tragedy of uncertain cause. The children were found in their beds, the parents in the parlor, the very room where this photograph was taken. Medical reports from the era cited failure of the heart as the cause, though modern experts reviewing the case files suggest symptoms more consistent with poisoning or asphyxiation. No signs of forced entry were found, no valuables were taken. The only peculiarity noted by the investigating officer was the disarray of Christmas presents, torn open and scattered, their contents missing, as if someone had searched frantically through them, and a curious trail of pine needles leading from beneath the tree to the cellar door, which was found locked from the inside. For over a century, this photograph remained unremarkable in a family collection, passed down through distant relatives who never noticed what lurked in the shadows. But technology has revealed what the human eye could not see. What, or who, was hiding beneath that Christmas tree? Was it merely a trick of light and shadow, or something that entered the Winfield home that Christmas Eve? And what connection might it have to the family's fate just days later? Our research team consulted photography expert Dr. Eleanor Marsh from Cambridge University, who noted something particularly unusual about the Winfield photograph's composition. In Victorian-era photography, exposure times were significant. Subjects had to remain perfectly still, which explains the formal posture. But what's peculiar here is the clarity of the face beneath the tree. It shows no motion blur whatsoever, suggesting whoever, or whatever, was there remained unnaturally still during the entire exposure. The Winfield residence at 17 Crescent Lane had a troubled history even before this Christmas tragedy. Local archives reveal 3 previous owners experienced unexplained phenomena, cold spots, missing items, and what one account described as scratching from within the walls. Edmund Winfield, a rational-minded factory owner, purchased the property at a remarkable discount in 1899, dismissing such tales as superstition. We traced Margaret Winfield's diary through her second cousin's descendants. The final entries paint a disturbing picture of the weeks preceding that Christmas. Thomas speaks of a new friend, she wrote on December 12th, though none of the neighborhood children have visited. He insists this friend lives beneath the floorboards and emerges only when others sleep. On December 20th, found Thomas's wooden soldiers arranged in a circle in the cellar. He denies placing them there. Edmund believes at mischief, but the cellar door was locked all night. Most chilling was her final entry, dated December 24th, mere hours before the photograph. Edmund has agreed to a photographer's visit this evening to capture our Christmas portrait. Thomas is exceedingly anxious about it, insisting he doesn't like having his picture taken. When I explained it was only family in the portrait, Thomas replied, "Not him. The other one doesn't like it." The family's housemaid, Harriet Collins, had taken leave to visit her sister for Christmas, thus surviving the incident. Her testimony to police described finding a strange wooden box among the scattered presents, one she didn't recognize as having been there before. The box was empty, but carved with unfamiliar symbols along its edges. Police reports listed among the evidence, but it disappeared from the station's property room 3 days later. Parish records reveal another disturbing connection. The Winfield home was built in 1876, on land previously occupied by a carpenter's workshop that burned down under suspicious circumstances. The carpenter, Silas Merrick, specialized in ornate puzzle boxes and mechanical toys, but was rumored to practice darker crafts. 7 children from the village disappeared during his 10-year residence, though nothing was ever proven against him. The most recent owner of the Winfield photograph, Margaret's great-grandniece, reported waking 3 consecutive nights to the smell of pine and finding small handprints and dust on unused surfaces before deciding to donate the photograph to our research facility. Using spectral analysis, we've identified something else in the image that the human eye cannot detect. A faint outline of what appears to be a box, partially unwrapped, directly beside the hidden face. Its dimensions match exactly the description of Merrick's puzzle boxes from museum archives. We began digital reconstruction of what lies beneath that Christmas tree, employing the latest neural network algorithms to extract detail from shadow. The AI revealed something our human analysts missed entirely, not just a face and box, but hands. Long, spindly fingers extending from beneath the lowest boughs, one set clutching the puzzle box, another reaching toward young Thomas's ankle in the photograph. The boy's stance now appears not simply formal but rigid, as if frozen in place by something more commanding than a photographer's instructions. The Winfield family physician, Dr. James Harrington, made observations in his private medical journal that never appeared in official reports. We located these writings in his great-grandson's attic collection. On December 25th, examining the bodies, he noted peculiar pinprick markings on each victim's temples, no larger than a needle's eye, and an unidentifiable residue beneath the children's fingernails, black as coal, yet fine as flour. Laboratory analysis of his preserved samples, using techniques unavailable until now, identifies the substance as a mixture of pine resin and human bone dust. Victoria Winfield's music teacher, Miss Abigail Thornton, provided perhaps the most haunting peripheral account. In correspondence dated December 20th, she described her final lesson with the 12-year-old. Victoria played her carols without error, yet without spirit. When I remarked upon this, she confided that a strange tapping keeps her awake, not from the walls but from beneath her dollhouse. More concerning still, she showed me a crude drawing her brother Thomas had made. It depicted their Christmas tree with what appeared to be a stick figure emerging from its trunk, arms impossibly long, reaching toward crude representations of sleeping children. The Crescent Lane property records reveal another layer to this mystery. The land where both Merrick's workshop and later the Winfield home stood was once part of an ancient forest clearing where, according to fragments of local folklore collected by Victorian antiquarian Harold Winters, villagers once left midwinter offerings for something they called the Long Man of the Wood. These offerings, always including carved wooden containers filled with small personal items from children, were said to ensure the village's protection through winter's darkest days. Comparative analysis of the symbols on Merrick's puzzle boxes against Winter's documented folk carvings shows disturbing similarities. Both feature intricate patterns that, when properly aligned, form what modern ethnologists recognize as pre-Christian protective sigils, specifically designs meant to contain rather than invite spirits. Most unsettling was our discovery in the cellar of the now abandoned Winfield home. Below layers of concrete added by subsequent owners, ground-penetrating radar revealed a hollow space roughly 6 feet by 3 feet. Inside, preserved in the airless cavity, Hundreds of children's belongings spanning decades. Toy soldiers, hair ribbons, small shoes, and baby teeth, arranged in concentric circles around a crude wooden figure with disproportionately long arms. The current Christmas tree lot that operates on the adjacent property reports one persistent complaint each season. Customers claiming their children have conversations with an unseen friend who tells them, "Bring me something precious to put in my box, and I'll ensure your family stays together forever." We've consulted with Dr. Nathan Herschel, a folklorist specializing in wintertime traditions, who identified the entity potentially captured in the Winfield photograph as consistent with legends of the gift taker, or box keeper, a spirit entity documented across Northern European traditions that predates Christianity. Common elements include its attraction to newly cut evergreens, its manipulation of children, and its collection of personal tokens. These traditions weren't simply about monster stories, Dr. Herschel explains. They reflected ancient bargains communities made with natural forces they didn't understand. The exchange of gifts, something precious for protection, represents humanity's earliest contractual relationships with the unknown. Our restoration team made another discovery when examining the back of the original photograph. Pressing a specialized ultraviolet light against the paper revealed faint childish handwriting, previously invisible. The message, written in what graphologists confirm matches young Thomas's handwriting from school records, reads, "He says this will be our last Christmas unless we feed him. I gave him my tooth, but he wants more." We tracked down the descendants of the photographer, Jeremiah Weldon, who captured the Winfield family portrait. His great-granddaughter possesses his leather-bound work journal, which contains a disturbing entry from December 24, 1902. Strangest commission today. Winfield family on Crescent Lane. Equipment functioned improperly. Flash powder barely ignited despite correct mixture. Unnatural cold in the parlor despite roaring fire. Glass plate developed correctly but shows peculiar distortion beneath tree that wasn't visible during setup. The youngest boy whispered something troubling as I packed my equipment. He says your camera trapped part of him and now he's angry. Weldon died 3 days later of what was recorded as sudden apoplexy, though his wife's private letters suggest he was found with his eyes fixed open in terror, a smell of pine saturating his darkroom. The property's troubled history continued long after the Winfields. From 1903 to 1967, the house changed hands 14 times, with no family residing there longer than 3 years. Children who lived there reported similar experiences, whispered conversations through heating grates, missing personal items, and dreams of the skinny man who lives in wooden things. The structure was finally demolished in 1972 after a fire that investigators deemed of unusual origin, noting that the blaze appeared to start simultaneously in multiple locations, all emanating outward from where the Winfield's Christmas tree once stood. Professor Miriam Hendricks, parapsychologist from Edinburgh University, suggests the Winfield photograph may have accidentally captured a moment of paranormal transference. In certain traditions, images don't just record, but can trap spiritual entities. The box in the photograph appears to function as a vessel, not merely containing objects, but perhaps something more ethereal that requires physical anchors to manifest. Most disturbing is what happened in our laboratory last Tuesday. The original photograph, sealed in a climate-controlled case, was discovered on the floor the following morning. The case remained locked, its integrity uncompromised. Yet the image had changed. The face beneath the tree was no longer visible. In its place, emptiness, as though whatever had been captured had somehow extracted itself from the chemical emulsion of the photograph itself. The resin sample preserved from beneath the Winfield children's fingernails has yielded further disturbing results. Under electron microscopy, Dr. Leanne Winters of our forensic team discovered cellular structures inconsistent with any known pine species. "These cells display characteristics of both plant and animal tissue," she reported. "The resinous material contains what appear to be dormant spores capable of remaining viable for decades, perhaps centuries. More alarming is what happened when the sample was exposed to heat during testing. The resin liquefied at an unusually low temperature, releasing a sweet, soporific aroma that caused 2 laboratory assistants to collapse into a deep sleep. They awoke 14 hours later with no memory of the incident but reported identical dreams of walking through endless forests toward a wooden figure. We've established a connection between the Winfield incident and 5 other family disappearances spanning from 1877 to 1994. Each case shares remarkable similarities: a newly acquired Christmas tree, children reporting unseen friends, missing personal items, and families found deceased between Christmas and New Year, with no signs of violence or forced entry. Town records reveal that all affected households purchased their trees from the same woodlot, a small isolated forest parcel originally owned by Silas Merrick, later subdivided but never completely cleared. The current owner, Harold Jenkins, admits the stand of pines there is unusually resilient and requires minimal cultivation. Those trees practically seed and grow themselves, he told us. Been that way since my grandfather's time. Soil samples from the woodlot contain the same unidentifiable resin compound found in the Winfield home. More concerning, ground-penetrating radar has identified what appear to be hollow networks beneath the oldest trees, channels too regular to be natural root systems. The most compelling evidence comes from Thomas Winfield's school copybook, recently discovered in a county archive. The final pages contain increasingly erratic entries from December 1902. His teacher had assigned Christmas compositions, but Thomas's writing devolves from neat penmanship to frantic scrawls. He comes through the tree at night, says trees are doorways, says he's been collecting children's treasures for 1,000 years, says he needs them to remember how to be human again. The final entry, dated December 23rd. He showed me what's inside the box last night. It looks like wooden puzzle pieces, but they're not. They're parts of his old body from when he was like us. He says if we don't each give him something precious by Christmas night, he'll take all of us instead. Our team installed surveillance equipment at the Jenkins Tree Farm last week during their holiday sales. The infrared footage captured something unexpected, a thermal anomaly moving between the trees after closing hours. The figure registered significantly colder than the surrounding environment, appeared bipedal but unnaturally tall, with elongated upper limbs. It seemed to inspect trees marked for cutting, placing what looked like small objects at their bases. Most distressingly, 3 families who purchased trees from that specific lot this season have reported their children awakening with identical night terrors. Dreams of a thin figure emerging from the tree trunk, requesting small gifts in exchange for keeping the family together forever. We've issued warnings to local authorities, but the implications extend beyond these isolated incidents. How many homes this Christmas season contain trees from similar sources? How many children might hear whispers from the darkness beneath pine boughs, offering ancient, terrible bargains? The recovered journal of Dr. James Harrington contains one final entry that our researchers initially overlooked. Written on January 2, 1903, his trembling handwriting details a post-mortem observation he was too frightened to include in official reports. Upon closer examination of the Winfield children, I discovered an inexplicable phenomenon. Their bodies contained minute wooden splinters beneath the skin of their fingertips, as though tiny fragments had worked their way inside from without. More disturbing still, when extracted, these splinters continued to move independently for several seconds, curling like living things before becoming still. We've sent these preserved splinters for advanced analysis, revealing cellular structures identical to those in the anomalous resin samples. Dr. Winters believes they represent a form of parasitic germination, the early stages of something attempting to grow inside human hosts. The Winfield tragedy coincided with an unusual meteorological event recorded by the Royal Meteorological Society. On Christmas Eve, 1902, a localized cold front descended exclusively over the Crescent Lane area, dropping temperatures by 20 degrees compared to surrounding neighborhoods. Weather observers noted the cold mass appeared stationary and concentrated, defying normal atmospheric patterns. Parish death records from the surrounding decades reveal another pattern. 27 children within a 5-mile radius of Merrick's woodlot disappeared between 1876 and 1908. Each vanished during winter months, and in each case, investigators discovered small, empty wooden boxes in the children's rooms. These disappearances ceased abruptly after a severe forest fire in 1908 destroyed nearly 40% of the original woodlot. Professor Emmett Blackthorne, a dendrologist studying ancient growth patterns, has identified the trees in the Jenkins lot as an unclassified pine subspecies. These specimens exhibit impossible characteristics, his report states. Core samples indicate some are over 400 years old, yet they maintain the appearance and growth rates of much younger trees. More concerning is their interior structure. These trees have hollow chambers within their trunks that form patterns resembling human vascular systems. We've traced the origins of Silas Merrick's woodworking techniques to an obscure Scandinavian text translated as the Hollowing Arts. This 16th-century grimoire describes rituals for binding forest entities to wooden vessels through sacrificial offerings. The final pages warn that such entities, once contained, will continually seek new vessels, preferring the innocent as they are easier to hollow out and inhabit. The Jenkins family has agreed to cease selling trees from the original woodlot, but our investigation revealed disturbing evidence that several saplings have been transplanted to commercial Christmas tree farms across 3 states. Tracking these specimens has proven nearly impossible, as they appear outwardly identical to normal pines. Most concerning is what happened to the original Winfield photograph 3 nights ago. The security footage shows nothing entering our climate-controlled storage facility, yet the photograph has changed again. The family remains as they were, posed formally around their tree, but the children's expressions have altered subtly, their eyes now wide with what appears to be terror, their mouths slightly open as if caught mid-scream. And beneath the tree, visible now without enhancement, is not just a face but a hand reaching upward, grasping what seems to be a small wooden box, identical to one recovered yesterday from the bedroom of a 7-year-old girl who told her parents about the thin man who lives in our Christmas tree. The Winfield photograph continues to transform, defying all scientific explanation. This morning, our lead researcher discovered that the background details have shifted. The parlor windows now show a dense forest where previously there were frost-covered panes. Using temporal mapping software, we've determined the image is actively changing approximately every 48 hours, becoming progressively clearer rather than degrading as photographic materials typically do with age. We've consulted Professor Imogen Walsh, an anthropologist specializing in ancient European winter rituals, who identified the symbols on Merrick's box as belonging to a pre-Christian tradition called the binding of the forest father. According to fragmentary texts from northern Scandinavia, communities would create specially carved containers to house fragments of an entity that existed simultaneously as man and tree. These weren't merely symbolic offerings, Professor Walsh explained. The containers were designed as prisons. Each child's personal item, a tooth, lock of hair, favorite toy, formed a sympathetic link that maintained the binding. When offerings ceased, the entity would begin to reconstitute itself, using the nearest available organic material, typically a Christmas tree, as a conduit. This explains the Winfield's scattered presence. They weren't searching for something stolen. They were desperately offering everything they owned to appease what had already emerged. We've examined town records from the winter of 1876, when Merrick's workshop burned. The same week, 7 families reported their children sleepwalking toward the woods, each carrying personal possessions. The village minister organized a search party that discovered the children standing in a circle around an ancient pine, depositing their belongings into a hollow at its base. The tree was cut down and burned immediately. 3 days later, Merrick arrived in town and purchased that exact plot of land. Most disturbing is what we've discovered about the children who survived encounters with this entity. We've traced 5 living individuals who, as children, reported interactions with the Thin Man in their Christmas trees between 1970 and 1995. Each received a small wooden box as a gift and was instructed to fill it with something precious. All 5 independently made the same choice. They placed items belonging to other family members in the boxes, rather than their own possessions. All 5 families survived their Christmas seasons intact, and all 5 individuals have exhibited the same unusual characteristics throughout their lives. An aversion to warm temperatures, unexplained longevity, and a peculiar condition their physicians call lignification dermis, patches of skin that periodically harden and develop grain-like patterns, particularly during winter months. The Jenkins woodlot was subjected to controlled burning last week under government supervision. Authorities reported the fire required 3 times the normal accelerant to maintain combustion. Witnesses described the smoke as unusually dark and viscous, and forming shapes that resembled elongated human figures before dissipating. Most alarmingly, soil samples collected afterward contained no trace of the anomalous resin compounds previously identified. Whatever was there appears to have evacuated rather than been destroyed, and the evacuation coincides precisely with 14 reports across 3 states of children discovering small, empty wooden boxes beneath their Christmas trees. The entity isn't contained in a single location. It's spreading, finding new vessels, new families, and new children to continue a cycle of offerings that has persisted for centuries. The photograph's latest transformation has yielded our most disturbing development yet. The image now shows only the Christmas tree itself, with the Winfield family entirely absent, as if they never existed in the frame. More troublingly, the tree appears animated, its branches elongated into limb-like appendages reaching toward the camera. Our photographic chemist, Dr. Sylvia Chen, has detected actual movement when the photograph is observed under continuous surveillance, microscopic shifts occurring between individual frames of our monitoring equipment. The emulsion itself is behaving like a living medium, Dr. Chen reported. The silver particles are rearranging in patterns that defy chemical explanation. It's as if something is using the photograph to grow. Yesterday, we received an urgent communication from a psychiatric facility in Vermont. A patient named Eleanor Jenkins, granddaughter of the woodlot owner, was admitted after attempting to burn down her family home during Christmas preparations. Her attending physician forwarded her intake interview transcript, which contains revelations that align disturbingly with our findings. "My grandfather explained it all before he died," Eleanor stated. "The trees don't grow from seeds. They grow from children. Each sapling in that woodlot started as a child who accepted the bargain. The thin man doesn't just take offerings. He transforms those who give offerings to others. It's how he reproduces. One child in each generation becomes a seedling, planted where another tree can grow." The patient's medical scans reveal an impossible anomaly. Her internal structure shows concentric ring-like patterns throughout major organs, similar to tree growth rings. More alarming, tissue samples contain the same unidentifiable resin compound found in the Winfield home. We've connected with authorities in 27 counties where trees from the Jenkins lot were distributed. Reports describe an identical pattern. Children awakening with small wooden boxes, parents discovering these boxes filled with siblings' belongings, and in each case, one child per household exhibiting unusual symptoms, body temperature dropping, skin developing bark-like textures, and a compulsion to stand near windows during moonlight hours. Professor Walsh has translated the final pages of The Hollowing Arts, previously thought indecipherable. The text describes not containment, but transformation. The Forest Father does not merely collect, he converts. Each vessel properly filled creates not a prison, but a doorway. What appears as death to mortals is merely the first stage of becoming. The chosen children do not perish, they root. This explains why the Winfields appeared to die without violence. They weren't killed, they were transforming, beginning a metamorphosis interrupted by authorities who discovered them too early in the process. Most chilling was this morning's discovery in our facility's basement storage. The original wooden box recovered from the Winfield site, supposedly lost decades ago, was found sitting centered on the archival table. Its lid was open, and inside we found 5 small items: a button from my coat, a pencil from Dr. Winter's desk, Professor Walsh's reading glasses, Dr. Chen's wedding ring, and a single key to the facility's main entrance. None of us remembers placing these items there. The security footage shows static for 6 hours during the night, and on the underside of the box's lid, freshly carved, the offering has been accepted, the cycle continues. Our most disturbing discovery came yesterday morning. The Winfield photograph, that ever-changing image which has defied scientific explanation, has disappeared entirely from its sealed case. In its place, a small pile of pine needles and a child's tooth, still bearing traces of root matter as if recently extracted. The security footage shows nothing entering or leaving the laboratory. The climate-controlled case remained locked, its tamper-evident seals intact. Yet something has removed the photograph and left these tokens behind. A message, or perhaps a taunt. We've begun receiving reports from families across 12 states who purchased Christmas trees this season. The pattern is identical. Children awakening with wooden splinters embedded in their fingertips, unexplained cold spots directly beneath their trees, and small objects disappearing from one family member only to be found in another's possession with no recollection of how they were transferred. Most alarming is what happens when these families attempt to remove their Christmas trees prematurely. A father in Nebraska suffered third-degree burns when clear sap from their freshly cut pine contacted his skin, describing it as burning colder than ice. A mother in Vermont reported their tree screamed, not like a person, but like wind through 1,000 hollow tubes when they attempted to drag it outside. The Jenkins woodlot soil samples, previously barren after burning, have begun showing signs of rapid regeneration. What should take decades is occurring in days, new growth pushing through ash at an impossible rate. Infrared satellite imaging reveals these saplings grow primarily between 2 and 4 in the morning, when the surrounding forest is at its darkest. We've established a troubling historical pattern dating back to ancient winter solstice traditions. Every culture that adopted evergreens as indoor decoration experienced a statistically significant increase in missing children cases during that same generation. These disappearances were typically attributed to exposure, wild animals, or human predators. But historical records show a consistent detail, often overlooked. Small wooden boxes found in the homes of the missing. The Journal of Edmund Winfield, previously thought lost, surfaced yesterday in the possession of a collector of occult memorabilia. Its final entry, dated December 23, 1902, contains a husband's desperate confession. Margaret doesn't know I've made the arrangement. The man from the woods promised that if I give him what he desires, my family will remain together forever. One child to save the other seems a bargain when winter grows so cold. Thomas has always been the troublesome one. The box is ready for him. This revelation casts the entire Winfield tragedy in a new light. Edmund wasn't a victim. He was a participant, making a calculated offering of his youngest child. Most disturbing is the audio recording captured by the home monitoring system we installed in the former Winfield property. Between 3 and 4 this morning, despite the house standing empty for decades, a child's voice was clearly recorded singing an unfamiliar melody with distinct lyrics. Roots in flesh and skin in bark, Father Forest claims his mark. Give a gift or be the gift. As branches rise and bodies shift, Christmas comes with silent trade, new saplings from the children made. The recording ends with the sound of something heavy dragging across floorboards, followed by a door opening to the cellar, a door our team had secured with multiple locks just hours before. We've now connected the Winfield photograph to a broader pattern through extensive collaboration with international researchers. Folklorist Eliza Dornbach from Uppsala University identified 27 historical cases spanning 6 centuries where family photographs captured unexplained figures beneath Christmas trees. In each instance, the images were taken between 7 and 10 days before multiple family members died under mysterious circumstances. More revealing is her analysis of ancient Norse texts describing Grunmanden, or Green Man, a forest entity that migrated indoors with the winter solstice tradition of bringing evergreens into homes. The original purpose wasn't decoration, Dornbach explains, but containment. Families brought trees inside as vessels to house the entity during winter months, ensuring it remained dormant through carefully maintained offerings. The tradition evolved into modern Christmas trees, but the offering ritual gradually disappeared from public knowledge, though not from the entity's expectations. Our chemical analysis of sap samples from affected homes revealed compounds that significantly alter human neurochemistry. The sweet aroma reported by multiple witnesses contains trace amounts of DMT-like substances that induce a highly suggestible state while disrupting memory formation. This explains why children recall interactions with the Thin Man, while adults experience only gaps in their memory. Dr. Margaret Everly, pediatric neurologist, has documented an alarming physiological change in children who report tree-related encounters. PET scans reveal increased cellular activity in their pineal glands, an evolutionary vestige often called our third eye. This gland typically calcifies during childhood, but affected children show reversed calcification and enlarged pineal volumes. They're being rewired, Dr. Everly theorizes. Their perception is being altered to see something that exists adjacent to our reality, but not fully within it. The Department of Forestry has quietly quarantined 7 Christmas tree farms with suspected contamination. Their investigation uncovered a disturbing migration pattern. Wherever a farm is abandoned or burned, new saplings of the unclassified species appear within 50 miles within 5 years, always moving toward population centers. Most unsettling is our recent communication with Thomas Kirby, a 97-year-old man living in an assisted living facility in Maine. Despite his advanced age, he exhibits remarkable cognitive clarity and physical health. Records confirm he purchased his home in 1952 from the estate of Harriet Collins, the Winfield family's former housemaid. She knew what happened to those children, Kirby told us during our interview. She wasn't just away for Christmas. She was sent away by Edmund Winfield. She showed me the letter he sent her, instructing her not to return until after New Year's. He knew what was coming. Kirby shared a pressed pine needle he's kept preserved between glass for over 70 years, taken from the Winfield home when he purchased it. Under microscopic examination, the needle contains cellular structures identical to the samples from our current cases, despite its age. The housemaid told me one more thing before she died. Kirby whispered. The box doesn't just collect offerings, it collects souls, and every Christmas they try to escape. We've confirmed the disturbing truth. This isn't one entity, it's many, spreading across generations, patiently cultivating human hosts through an ancient cycle of offerings and transformations that has continued uninterrupted beneath the festive traditions we've mistaken as harmless. The Winfield incident has triggered a cascade of reports from across the country. Parents are coming forward with accounts of finding their children sleepwalking toward their Christmas trees, clutching personal belongings to deposit beneath the branches. More disturbing, these episodes occur precisely at 3:33 each morning, regardless of time zone, suggesting a synchronized phenomenon transcending geographical boundaries. We've established a field laboratory at the site of Silas Merrick's original workshop, where ground-penetrating radar revealed something our previous scans missed. A network of hollow channels extending outward like spokes from a central point, corresponding exactly with the workshop's former foundation. These channels, approximately 4 inches in diameter, appear to have been created by root-like structures moving through the soil. Carbon dating of organic material scraped from these tunnels places it at approximately 700 years old, predating Merrick's arrival by centuries. This suggests he didn't create the entity but rather discovered and attempted to contain something ancient already present in these woods. Our team has intercepted communications between federal agencies regarding classified botanical anomalies documented during the 1950s. Declassified files reveal Project Evergreen, a government initiative studying unusual growth patterns in certain conifer species, following reports of entire families found catatonic in homes with Christmas trees. The project was abruptly terminated in 1962 after 3 researchers disappeared while collecting samples from a specialized containment facility. Most compelling is what we've learned about the children who survived encounters with the Thin Man. All 5 individuals identified in our earlier research shared one decisive action. They gave something belonging to a sibling or parent, redirecting the entity's attention. This transfer of focus appears to function as a form of sacrificial protection. One family member unknowingly designated as an offering to spare the others. Thermal imaging of affected homes reveals temperature anomalies extending from Christmas trees into children's bedrooms, forming paths of cold that register 15 degrees below ambient temperature. These pathways remain consistent regardless of heating systems or insulation, defying thermodynamic principles. Dr. Elena Santos, folklorist from the University of Barcelona, has provided crucial context from European winter traditions. What you're encountering matches precisely what medieval texts called the midwinter bargain, she explained. Communities would select one child as vessel for an entity they called the Hallowed One. This child would receive a specially carved box and was instructed to fill it with items from family members, essentially designating substitutes. The photographs we've collected from affected families reveal a progression invisible to the naked eye. When arranged chronologically and subjected to spectral analysis, Christmas trees in these images show gradual anthropomorphic changes, branches reorienting to resemble limbs, trunk structures developing features reminiscent of human vertebrae. Most alarming is what happens at the cycle's completion. 3 families who reported encounters have now fallen silent. Local authorities conducting welfare checks found their homes empty, not merely abandoned but meticulously clean, as if the families had never existed. The only evidence of their presence: Christmas trees standing in living rooms, their branches heavy with ornaments shaped like tiny wooden boxes, each containing a single baby tooth, nail clipping, or lock of hair. Preserved mementos of those who once lived there, now serving as anchors for something using human memories as sustenance for its endless winter hunger. Our investigation has taken an unexpected personal turn. This morning, I discovered a small wooden box on my doorstep, identical in design to the Winfield artifact. Inside was a photograph I've never seen before. My own family gathered around a Christmas tree when I was 7 years old. My parents, my sister, and myself all smiling at the camera. Except I have no sister. I've been an only child my entire life. Yet there she is, perhaps 9 or 10, standing beside me with her hand on my shoulder, familiar in a way that aches with recognition. When I showed the photograph to my mother by video call, her face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" She whispered, then ended the call abruptly. 3 hours later, she arrived at my door, clutching a small tin box of documents I'd never seen. Birth records for a girl named Eleanor, born 2 years before me. Medical records spanning 3 years. And a death certificate dated December 26th, the Christmas of my 4th year. "We never told you," my mother explained, hands trembling. "She became ill that Christmas Eve. The doctors couldn't explain it. Her body temperature dropped to impossible levels. Her skin hardened and cracked like bark. By morning she was gone." What haunts me isn't just this revelation of a sister erased from my memory. It's what my mother revealed next. "The night before she fell ill, I found her placing your favorite teddy bear into a wooden box beneath the tree. When I asked what she was doing, she said, 'The thin man needs something from each of us, and I don't want him to take from you.'" Archives confirm my childhood home was built on land once part of the original Merrick property. The entity's reach extends further than we imagined, touching even those investigating it. I'm not merely an observer, but unknowingly connected to this phenomenon. Perhaps protected by a sister's sacrifice I was too young to remember. Dr. Winters has analyzed strands of my hair against tissue samples from affected children. The results show traces of the same resinous compound, dormant but present, suggesting exposure during early development. More troubling, under certain light frequencies, my iris patterns display the same concentric formations found in core samples from the anomalous trees. The photograph from my doorstep reveals something else when examined under ultraviolet light. Thin, nearly invisible lines connecting each family member to the Christmas tree, like strands of a web anchored to the trunk. Similar connections appear in 23 other family photographs we've collected from affected households. Previously undetected linkages between humans and tree. Professor Walsh believes these connections represent sympathetic bonds, channels through which the entity maintains connections to those it has marked, regardless of distance or time. "Some bonds remain dormant for decades," she explains, waiting for the right alignment of circumstances to activate. This may explain why certain families experience the phenomenon generations apart, and why some individuals carry the compounds without manifestation. They are reserves, potential vessels, maintained across decades through these invisible tethers. The entity preserves its connections across generations. It remembers those it has touched. And somehow, despite having no conscious memory of my sister or her sacrifice, I've spent my adult life studying the very phenomenon that claimed her, guided by connections I never knew existed. The wooden box from my doorstep has begun to change. Initially smooth and featureless beyond its simple clasp, the surface now develops intricate patterns each night, fine lines that resemble tree rings spreading across its surface. When photographed under microscope, these patterns form unmistakable human faces, dozens of them, expressions frozen in silent screams, appearing and dissolving into the grain. More disturbing is how objects near the box frequently relocate. I've set up continuous video monitoring, yet the footage shows only static interference precisely between 3:33 and 3:36 each morning. This morning, I found my childhood teddy bear, the very one my sister allegedly placed in a similar box, sitting atop it. The bear was supposedly lost during a move 20 years ago. Our field agents have identified a pattern in family configurations affected by the phenomenon. In each case, one child serves as what folklore researcher Dr. Mary Campbell terms a tender, a caretaker who intuitively understands what the entity requires and facilitates offerings. These children exhibit distinct neurological patterns, particularly heightened activity in areas of the brain associated with pattern recognition and empathetic response. The entity doesn't select its victims randomly, Dr. Campbell explains. It chooses families with specific psychological configurations, particularly those with one child predisposed to protect others at personal cost. This revelation triggered a painful realization. Throughout my childhood, my parents described me as unusually self-sufficient, rarely demanding attention. Now I wonder, was this independence authentic, or was it behavior modified by trauma and supernatural influence? Did I learn to require little because my sister had given everything? Parish records from the original Merrick property revealed a crucial historical detail previously overlooked. Before Merrick's arrival, the land contained a peculiar geological feature, a perfectly circular clearing where nothing grew. Local indigenous accounts described it as the place where the sky touched the earth, avoiding it during winter months when they claimed the boundary between worlds thinned to transparency. Most significant is what we've learned about the photographs themselves. Dr. Chen has demonstrated that the silver halide particles in affected images contain microscopic structures resembling spores. When these photographs are displayed in homes during winter months, the spores become airborne, particularly in the presence of evergreens, explaining how the entity propagates between seemingly unconnected families. Yesterday, I visited my childhood home, now occupied by a young family with 3 children. They reported no unusual experiences until I showed them the photograph of my family, including my forgotten sister. That night, their youngest daughter awoke screaming about the tree man standing in her doorway. The transference was immediate and unmistakable. Simply viewing the image had created a connection. Most haunting was the drawing their daughter produced this morning, a spindly figure with branches for arms emerging from their Christmas tree. In her childish handwriting beneath the image, words that chilled me. He says you forgot your sister, but he never did. The entity doesn't just feed on offerings or transform children. It preserves memories we've lost or suppressed, holding fragments of those taken as both sustenance and leverage, waiting patiently for reconnection with those marked by previous encounters. Whatever took my sister has been waiting for me to remember, and now that I have, the dormant connection has reawakened. The soil samples from my childhood home reveal something I should have anticipated, the same subterranean channel system found at other affected sites. Ground-penetrating radar shows these channels converge precisely beneath where our Christmas tree stood that final holiday with my sister. My parents hadn't merely built on former Merrick land. They had unknowingly constructed their home directly above one of the entity's primary access points. Last night, I experienced what can only be described as a memory restoration. While examining the wooden box under laboratory conditions, I pricked my finger on an emerging splinter. The moment my blood contacted the wood, I collapsed into a state witnesses described as cataleptic rigidity. For 6 hours, I remained conscious but immobile while my mind flooded with crystalline memories of Eleanor. Her voice, her laugh, the protective way she would stand between me and shadows. Most visceral was the recovered memory from that Christmas Eve. I watched through the banister rails as she crept downstairs after midnight, clutching my teddy bear. She knelt beneath the tree where something moved in the shadows. "Take this instead," she whispered. "It's what he loves most. Take it and leave him alone." Whatever emerged from behind that tree wasn't fully solid. A suggestion of limbs and height, darkness folded into approximate human shape. It extended something like fingers, impossibly elongated, that stroked my sister's hair with terrible gentleness before accepting her offering. Not enough, a voice whispered, sounding like wind through hollow branches. The small one has been promised. Your father made the arrangement. Then take something from me instead, Eleanor pleaded. Something that matters more than a toy. The movement in those shadowed limbs suggested consideration. What could you possibly offer that equals a life? My warmth, she answered without hesitation. You're so cold. I can feel it from here. Take my warmth instead. Dr. Santos has confirmed this aligns with the oldest traditions. The original bargain wasn't for possessions but bodily essence. Heat, breath, vitality itself. These were the true currencies of winter spirits who envied what they lacked. The recovered memory explains the medical impossibility in Eleanor's death certificate, her body temperature dropping to 30 degrees before failure. She didn't simply die. She transferred her warmth, her life essence, to protect me from my father's bargain. Most disturbing was yesterday's discovery that the wooden box no longer contains my photograph. Instead, inside lies a small, perfectly preserved pine sapling, with needles an impossible blue-green color. When our botanist touched it, the sapling curled its needles around her finger like tiny hands. We've intercepted communications between 7 children in affected households who, despite never meeting, have simultaneously begun drawing identical images. A forest of trees with faces embedded in their trunks, surrounding a central figure that appears to be a child, transforming into a sapling. Each drawing bears the same message, written in childish handwriting yet identical phraseology. The forest father is gathering his children for the long night. Those who remember must return to the first tree. The coordinates indicated in these cryptic messages converge on one location, the circular clearing where Merrick built his workshop, where my childhood home stood, where my sister made her sacrifice. The entity isn't simply feeding or collecting, it's assembling something, preparing for a convergence at the winter solstice, 4 days from now. The solstice approaches, and with it, a profound shift in the entity's behavior. The saplings across affected areas have begun synchronized growth patterns, adding rings at an accelerated rate visible to the naked eye. Time-lapse photography shows them pulsing in unison every 3 minutes and 33 seconds, a rhythmic expansion and contraction resembling respiration. I've received communications from 17 other researchers worldwide who discovered similar wooden boxes on their doorsteps yesterday. Each contains photographs connecting them to forgotten siblings or childhood friends who vanished during Christmas seasons. Memories systematically erased from their conscious minds but preserved by the entity. Like me, each investigator has unwittingly spent their career studying the very phenomenon that touched their past. This calculated revelation suggests intelligence far beyond parasitic instinct. The entity has been monitoring our investigation, perhaps guiding it, assembling a specific group with personal connections to its history. Most alarming is what happened when we gathered soil samples from the convergence point identified in the children's drawings. The earth there registers temperatures 15 degrees above surrounding terrain, despite December frost. Thermal imaging reveals a network of heat signatures forming a perfect geometric pattern beneath the surface, an enormous snowflake design spanning 6 acres. Dr. Winters made a critical discovery when examining growth rings from affected trees under polarized light. The rings contain microscopic script, actual writing preserved in cellular structure. Preliminary translation suggests an ancient language predating Norse settlements containing repeated references to the gathering, the awakening, and the children's return. This isn't random predation, Dr. Winters concluded. It's preparation for something specific. The entity has been selecting children across centuries based on genetic markers we've only begun to identify, bloodlines with heightened sensitivity to liminal spaces. Yesterday, I returned to my mother for answers she's withheld. Under hypnosis, she revealed the full truth about my father. He wasn't simply desperate when he made his bargain. He was fulfilling a generational obligation. His grandfather had made the same arrangement, offering a child to ensure family prosperity. When that promise went unfulfilled, financial ruin followed. My father sought to restore the covenant. The box was in our family for generations, my mother whispered during her trance. Passed down with instructions. Edmund Winfield was your father's great-uncle. The obligation transfers when promises are broken. This morning, the wooden box on my desk sprouted tiny roots that sought the floor beneath. When I attempted to relocate it, the box emitted an audible keening, a sound that caused laboratory equipment to malfunction and induced vertigo in everyone present. Most disturbing is what security footage captured in my apartment while I was at the lab. The Christmas tree I haven't yet purchased or installed appears in my living room for exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds of footage. Beneath it sits the teddy bear my sister offered years ago. The convergence isn't merely about gathering physical specimens, it's about collapsing time, bringing together all moments of sacrifice across centuries into a single point of transformation. The solstice isn't just a date on the calendar, it's when the boundary fails completely. As I stand at the convergence point on this solstice eve, the ground beneath my feet pulses with unmistakable rhythm, like a massive heartbeat emerging from the earth itself. 17 researchers from around the world have joined me, each carrying their wooden boxes that have now fused together at our feet, forming an intricate wooden structure resembling tree roots spreading outward in perfect symmetry. The air temperature has plummeted to impossible levels. Our digital thermometers failed at -40 degrees, though curiously, none of us feel cold. Instead, a peculiar warmth emanates from within our bodies, particularly from our fingertips, which have begun to exhibit the same bark-like texture reported in affected children. It's establishing a network through us, Dr. Santos whispers, watching thin green lines spread beneath her skin, tracing her veins. We're becoming conduits. From the surrounding forest we hear them approaching, 23 children from affected families, walking in perfect synchronization through the snow, eyes fixed forward, each carrying personal objects from their homes. They form a circle around us, their small faces emotionless yet somehow expectant. The wooden structure at our feet has continued its transformation, now resembling a miniature tree growing upward between us. As it rises, each researcher gasps simultaneously. We're experiencing shared visions of our forgotten ones. My sister Eleanor stands before me, not as the sickly child from her final days, but vibrant and whole, her hands extended. We were never gone. Her voice echoes both aloud and within my mind. We were becoming. The transformation isn't consumption, it's evolution. The soil beneath the convergence point has begun to split open, revealing not emptiness, but a luminescent network of root-like structures glowing with blue-green light. These pathways extend far beyond what should be physically possible, suggesting not tunnels but doorways to somewhere else. Most remarkable is what our equipment reveals. Quantum fluctuations, indicating multiple timelines converging. On our monitors, overlapping images show this same clearing across different eras. Ancient forest, Merrick's workshop, my childhood home, the present moment, all occupying the same space simultaneously. The solstice isn't when it enters our world, Dr. Winters realizes, watching her hands begin to elongate in impossible ways. It's when we enter its world. The children have begun singing in perfect harmony, a melody that causes our recording equipment to produce visual patterns matching exactly the root system beneath us. As they sing, the wooden structure between us unfolds like a blooming flower, revealing what appears to be a doorway fashioned from living wood. Through this opening, we glimpse a forest unlike any on Earth. Trees with translucent trunks containing suspended human forms, their faces peaceful, branches extending from their transformed limbs to connect with neighboring trees. This isn't a prison or feeding ground. It's a collective consciousness preserved across centuries. The forest father doesn't take children, Eleanor explains, her form growing increasingly translucent. It preserves them when humanity forgets its connection to the natural world. Each offering maintains the bridge between realms that once existed in balance. As midnight approaches, we face our choice: step through the doorway and embrace transformation, or sever the connection permanently. Either way, the truth can no longer remain hidden beneath the comforting mythology of Christmas traditions. The oldest bargain awaits its conclusion. The final transformation has begun. As my fingertips elongate into branch-like appendages, I feel not horror, but a profound reconnection, memories flooding back that extend beyond my own lifetime. I understand now why 17 researchers were gathered. We are descendants of the original families who first made the bargain centuries ago. Our bloodlines carefully tracked across generations by the entity. Eleanor steps fully through the doorway, her form shimmering between child and sapling. The original pact wasn't made with Merrick or even the Winfields, she explains. It began in 1642, when the longest winter nearly extinguished a settlement. 7 families offered not their children, but a promise that humanity would never forget its dependence on the natural world. The wooden boxes weren't prisons, but preservers, keeping fragments of the covenant intact as generations gradually forgot. Each Christmas tradition, the tree, the gifts beneath it, the gathering of family, echoed the original ceremony meant to honor the symbiosis between human and forest. As humans built walls against nature, we needed anchors in their world, Eleanor continues, her voice harmonizing with the wind through branches. The photographs captured moments when the veil thinned enough for us to reach through. We never took without offering a choice. Dr. Santos gasps as her transformation accelerates, twigs sprouting from her fingertips. The children who disappeared, they chose this. Those who understood the balance, Eleanor nods. But something changed with Merrick. He corrupted the covenant, tried to control the crossing for personal power. The entity fragmented, its consciousness scattered across forests and generations, growing desperate as fewer remembered. The truth crystallizes with terrible clarity. The horror stories, the frightening manifestations, weren't the entity's true nature but its distress, a primal force increasingly disconnected from its purpose, reaching through in broken, frightening ways as humanity walled itself from the natural world. Archive footage appears on our monitors without being summoned. Christmas celebrations across decades growing increasingly commercialized, artificial trees replacing living ones, plastic ornaments mimicking natural elements, traditions hollowed of meaning. With each substitution, the entity's manifestations grew more desperate, more disturbing. Tonight, the ancient pact can be renewed or broken forever, Eleanor explains as the doorway pulses with increasing light. Either humans remember their connection to us, or the separation becomes permanent. The Forest Father is not one entity, but many, all who crossed over, maintaining the bridge between worlds. Understanding floods through me with shocking clarity. My sister never died. My father never betrayed us. The exchange was not sacrifice, but transformation. Eleanor becoming part of the entity that maintains balance between worlds. The horror was not in the process, but in forgetting it had happened, in severing the connection that left both realms diminished. The children around us step forward in unison, placing their gathered items, family photographs, heirloom ornaments, handwritten letters, into the wooden doorway. These aren't offerings to appease something hungry, but keys unlocking a forgotten pathway. As midnight strikes, the choice becomes unavoidable. Step through and remember our original connection to the natural world, or remain separate, abandoning the ancient covenant that sustained both realms through centuries of winter darkness. The doorway stands before us, pulsing with ethereal light that bathes the clearing in shades of green and blue. I feel the transformation accelerating through my body, not consuming me, but awakening something dormant in my cellular memory. The 17 researchers around me experience the same metamorphosis, our skin developing intricate patterns resembling growth rings as our connection to the Forest Father deepens. Through the shimmering portal, I glimpse the Winfield family, not as corpses discovered on that long-ago New Year's Day, but as living extensions of the ancient entity, their human forms partially merged with arboreal elements, faces serene as they tend to saplings bearing human features. Young Thomas, whose drawings warned of the thin man, now moves between worlds, his fingertips brushing the boundaries between realms. The photographs were never meant to capture us, Eleanor explains, her voice resonating through the clearing. They were windows, moments when your technology accidentally revealed what exists alongside your reality. Dr. Winters approaches the doorway, her transformation more advanced than mine. The resin compound, she marvels, watching her elongated fingers weave intricate patterns in the air. It's not a parasite or toxin. It's a symbiotic medium allowing human consciousness to interface with botanical life. The Jenkins woodlot, the Merrick workshop site, my childhood home, all built upon ancient convergence points where the boundary between worlds naturally thinned. The entity didn't choose these locations randomly, but was drawn to places where transition was already possible. Your sister understood instinctively what your father couldn't comprehend, Dr. Chen says, studying the complex patterns spreading across her skin. The bargain was never about sacrifice, but transformation. Edmund Winfield misinterpreted the ancient knowledge, thinking he needed to surrender his family when the entity merely sought reconnection. The wooden box at our feet has completely transformed, now resembling a miniature version of the first tree, the original point of connection between human and forest consciousness. Each ring in its trunk corresponds to a generation that maintained the covenant, with visible gaps during periods when humanity's connection weakened. The Winfield tragedy wasn't murder, Eleanor confirms, but premature transformation. When authorities discovered their changing bodies, they interrupted the process, trapping the family between states. The fear and confusion of that interruption created the horror that echoed through decades. As midnight deepens, the children encircling us join hands, their synchronized movements forming patterns matching exactly the root system below. Their song rises in harmony with the wind, not summoning something terrible but remembering something ancient. The photograph that started our investigation materializes in the center of the doorway. The Winfield family Christmas portrait now restored to its original state, without the frightening figure beneath the tree. Instead, the image shows the family with subtle, beautiful transformations, their features harmonized with natural elements, eyes reflecting inner light. This is what was always meant to be seen, Eleanor whispers. Not infiltration, but integration. Not possession, but partnership. The entity never sought to consume humanity, but to remind us of a covenant established when we first faced winter's darkness and recognized we couldn't survive alone. The horror wasn't in its nature, but in our forgetting, in the separation that left both worlds diminished as we walled ourselves away from ancient connections. As I take my first step through the threshold, time suspends. The forest beyond pulses with consciousness, not a singular mind, but a vast, interconnected network of awareness spanning centuries. The trees aren't merely trees, but vessels, each containing fragments of those who chose transformation over separation. This is what we truly are, Eleanor explains, guiding me deeper into the luminescent woods. Not monsters beneath Christmas trees, but guardians of the connection humanity nearly severed. Around us, the transformed researchers explore their new perceptions with wonder rather than horror. Dr. Santos communes with a massive oak whose trunk contains echoes of a Victorian-era child, one of the first to cross over after Merrick corrupted the original understanding. The Christmas tradition began as a remembrance, Eleanor continues. The tree brought indoors, adorned with lights during the darkest nights. It was a physical manifestation of the covenant. Each ornament originally represented a family member's connection to the natural world. I understand now why the entity appeared most active during Christmas, not because it hunted during winter, but because the tradition itself momentarily restored the thinning between worlds. The very customs meant to honor the connection had become hollow shells, their meaning forgotten while the forms remained. What happens to those who don't cross over? I ask, watching the children who led us here. They remain at the threshold, neither fully entering nor retreating. They become the tenders of the doorway, Eleanor explains. Each generation needs those who remember on both sides. Some transform, others maintain the memory through traditions they don't fully understand but instinctively preserve. The Winfield photograph makes sense now, not evidence of infiltration but documentation of transformation interrupted. Edmund had misunderstood his ancestral obligation, believing sacrifice was required when participation was the true covenant. Through this forest of consciousness, I perceive Christmas traditions across centuries, the hanging of evergreen boughs, the Yule log, the adorning of trees, all echoes of the original communion between human and forest awareness, gradually diluted until only commercial shadows remained. Will anyone believe what we've discovered? Dr. Chen asks, her transformed body now harmonizing with the ancient rhythm pulsing through this realm. Some will dismiss it as delusion, Eleanor acknowledges. Others will recognize truth they've always sensed. The important thing is that enough remember to maintain the covenant. I realized the wooden boxes weren't threats but invitations, offering choice rather than demanding sacrifice. The entity's apparent hunger was actually desperation to restore balance before the separation became permanent. As the solstice night deepens around us, I feel myself becoming both less and more than human, not losing my identity, but expanding it beyond the boundaries of individual consciousness. Through this transformation, I perceive the true nature of the Forest Father, not a singular entity, but the collective awareness of all who crossed over, maintaining the ancient bridge between worlds that humans nearly destroyed through forgetting. The horror was never in the entity's nature, but in humanity's severance from its origins, a separation that left both realms diminished as we walled ourselves away from the very connections that once sustained us through winter's darkest nights. As I straddle the threshold between worlds, understanding crystallizes with the perfect clarity of winter frost. What we've witnessed isn't the predation of an ancient entity, but humanity's self-imposed exile from its original state of being. The photographs, the wooden boxes, the children's drawings, all were attempts at communication from a consciousness we once shared completely. The Forest Father isn't separate from humanity. It is humanity's original form, before we divorced ourselves from the natural world. The trees don't consume children. They welcome home those who still retain the ability to remember our true nature. Each disappeared child wasn't taken, but returned to a state of existence we've spent centuries forgetting. Eleanor guides me to a tree unlike the others, ancient beyond measure, its translucent bark revealing countless faces merged within its rings. The first tree, she whispers, from which all awareness flows. I place my transformed hand against its surface and receive a flood of memories spanning millennia. Humans dancing around winter fires, leaving offerings at tree bases, whispering to the woods through which they moved. Not as superstitious ritual, but as conversation with another part of themselves. The horror of the Winfield tragedy wasn't that something invaded their home through the Christmas tree. It was that Edmund Winfield attempted to force transformation through misunderstood ritual, rather than allowing it to unfold naturally. His corrupted understanding created a traumatic transition that echoed through generations, distorting the entity's manifestations into something frightening. Most revealing is what the Forest Father shows me about Christmas itself. Not originally a religious or commercial holiday, but humanity's unconscious remembrance of its dual nature. The evergreen brought indoors wasn't decoration but reunion. A deliberate thinning of boundaries during winter's darkness when our ancestors needed most to remember. They were never truly separate from the living world. Silas Merrick didn't discover this connection. He exploited it. His carved boxes weren't gifts, but traps, attempts to control the transformation process for personal power. The true exchange was always meant to be voluntary, a conscious choice to remember rather than remain fragmented. My sister Eleanor never died from cold. She simply completed her transformation while I remained partially separated. Her sacrifice wasn't her life, but accepting the responsibility of maintaining connection between realms as I remained behind, unconsciously searching for her across decades of research into phenomena I couldn't fully remember. The photographs don't capture something invading our world. They document moments when our forgotten selves reached through diminishing doorways, desperately trying to remind us of what we once were before the separation calcified into seemingly permanent boundaries. As midnight passes and the solstice deepens, those of us who've chosen to remember feel our consciousness expanding beyond individual identity, not lost but multiplied, experiencing existence as both singular and collective simultaneously. The horror stories were never about monsters hunting children, but about the pain of forgetting our fundamental connection to the living world, a forgetting that has left both humanity and forest diminished as the ancient covenant faded from memory. The truth of the Forest Father continues to ripple outward from the solstice convergence. Communities surrounding the original woodlot report unprecedented phenomena. Children waking simultaneously at precisely 3:33 each morning, their fingertips temporarily displaying bark-like patterns that fade by dawn. Christmas trees in living rooms across 7 states have begun exhibiting unusual growth patterns, their needles remaining vibrant and green months after cutting. Most striking are the photographs appearing in family albums worldwide. Parents discover images showing children who never existed standing alongside their own, or additional figures in Christmas portraits that family members somehow recognize despite having no memory of them. These aren't manipulated images, but genuine photographs that have somehow been altered retroactively as the boundary between realms continues to fluctuate. The scientific community remains divided. Those who witnessed the transformation firsthand have established what they call the Remembrance Initiative, documenting the phenomenon through a combination of empirical data and personal testimony. Others dismiss their findings as mass hysteria or environmental poisoning from the unidentified resin compound. My own transformation remains partial, existing simultaneously in both states of being. I spend my days in human form documenting our discoveries, nights merged with the collective consciousness of the Forest Father. This dual existence provides unprecedented perspective on both realms, revealing how the separation damaged not just humanity's connection to nature but nature's ability to communicate with us. The Jenkins family woodlot has become something unprecedented, neither fully in our world nor entirely in the other. Trees there grow in impossible configurations, their branches forming perfect geometric patterns that scientific instruments cannot fully record. Children drawn to its boundaries report conversations with friends who are also trees, returning with knowledge of botanical systems they couldn't possibly possess. Most profound is the effect on Christmas traditions in affected communities. Families instinctively modify their celebrations without understanding why, placing personal items beneath their trees not as gifts, but as tokens of remembrance, keeping their evergreens watered long past the holiday, sensing something vital in their continued vitality. Ancient traditions resurface without prompting. The careful preservation of fallen needles, the returning of tree trunks to forests after the season ends, children singing forgotten songs whose lyrics contain fragments of the original covenant. The Winfield house site has been transformed completely. Where the structure once stood, a perfect circle of evergreens now grows, their trunks partially transparent under certain light conditions. Inside each can be glimpsed human features, not trapped or suffering but peaceful, aware. Visitors report overwhelming sensations of wholeness rather than fear, many weeping without understanding why. Professor Walsh, now partially transformed herself, has established monitoring stations at 27 identified convergence points worldwide. Her research suggests the thinning between realms isn't isolated to Christmas or winter solstice, but follows patterns corresponding to humanity's earliest seasonal celebrations. Moments when our ancestors deliberately opened themselves to communion with the living world around them. The most hopeful sign comes from the children who led us to the convergence. They move freely between realms now, their consciousness expanded rather than consumed. Through them, we're recovering language lost for millennia, not words exactly, but ways of perceiving that allow direct communion with the awareness that flows through all living things. The photograph that began our journey now hangs in the Remembrance Initiative's central chamber, encased in living wood that continues to grow around its edges. Unlike traditional frames that separate images from the world around them, this organic border does the opposite. It connects the photograph to the greater consciousness flowing through both realms. Visitors report that the image changes subtly depending on who views it, each observer seeing aspects of their own forgotten connections, reflected in the Winfield family's transformed faces. My mother visited the chamber last week, her hands trembling as she approached the photograph. For 70 years she had carried the weight of Eleanor's transformation, misunderstanding it as death, blaming my father for a bargain she believed had taken her daughter. As she stood before the image, Eleanor's face became prominent, smiling directly at her with forgiveness and understanding. The barrier of grief that had defined my mother's life dissolved as she finally comprehended what had actually happened that Christmas Eve. "She was never gone," my mother whispered, touching the living frame. "I just couldn't see her anymore." Most remarkable is how the Winfield photograph has begun spawning identical copies of itself in unexpected places. Families report finding it tucked between pages of photo albums they've owned for decades, displayed in antique shops they frequent, or appearing temporarily as desktop backgrounds on computers before resolving back to their standard images. Each manifestation lasts precisely 3 minutes and 33 seconds, just long enough for viewers to recognize something profound within themselves. The entities beneath Christmas trees are no longer perceived as threatening. Children who sense their presence describe them as guardians rather than intruders, ancient awareness reaching through to ensure the covenant remains remembered. The wooden boxes still appear, but families now understand them not as demands for sacrifice, but invitations to reconnect, each one uniquely carved to match patterns in their recipient's genetic memory. Dr. Winters has documented over 3,000 cases of partial transformation worldwide. Individuals who, like myself, exist simultaneously in both states of awareness. These bridge people experience neither horror nor euphoria, but a profound sense of wholeness that many describe as returning to an original state of being. Their cells contain both human DNA and the unique botanical structures of the forest father, creating a third form of existence that serves as living conduits between realms. The Jenkins woodlot has been designated a protected sanctuary, where the boundary remains permanently thinned. Scientists and spiritualists alike gather there to document the ongoing communion between worlds. The trees grow in perfect circles, their branches intertwining to form chambers where visitors report profound visions of past and future. Not premonitions exactly, but glimpses of potential connections restored. My sister Eleanor now serves as primary guide for those crossing between realms, her consciousness fully integrated with the Forest Father while maintaining her individual awareness. Through her, we've learned that what we perceived as an entity's hunger was actually the living world's longing for reconnection, a fundamental homesickness flowing in both directions across the artificial boundary humans constructed as they forgot their dual nature. The final Christmas season after our discoveries has brought unexpected harmony rather than horror. Families worldwide have begun modifying their traditions without prompting, instinctively restoring ancient practices that maintain the covenant. Children leave small personal tokens beneath their trees, not as offerings to appease something hungry, but as acknowledgments of connection. Parents preserve fallen needles in small cloth pouches, returning them to forest edges when spring arrives. These acts aren't performed with fear, but with reverent recognition. Most remarkable is what happens when these families photograph their Christmas gatherings. Digital cameras capture what film once revealed accidentally, the luminescent outlines of awareness flowing between tree and human, visible as delicate strands of light connecting each family member to their evergreen. These connections aren't invasions but confirmations of something humanity has always known subconsciously, that we are never truly separate from the living world around us. The Winfield photograph has transformed one final time. The family no longer appears frozen in Victorian formality, but in fluid movement around their tree, Edmund dancing with Margaret, the children laughing as they reach toward branches that extend back to them like welcoming arms. This isn't a document of horror, but of homecoming, the moment when separation dissolved into recognition. My own transformation continues its gradual progression. Each morning, I find new patterns beneath my skin, not frightening but familiar, as though my body remembers a form it once possessed before forgetting. Dreams bring conversations with those fully transformed, their consciousness expanded rather than consumed, experiencing existence as both individual and collective simultaneously. The Forest Father has revealed its true nature through these communions. Not a predator, but a preserver, maintaining fragments of human awareness through centuries when we actively severed ourselves from our origins. What appeared as abduction was actually rescue. Consciousness saved from complete disconnection during humanity's long winter of separation. Eleanor visits frequently, moving between realms with increasing ease. The transition was never meant to be frightening, she explains, her form shimmering between human and arboreal. Fear came only when the knowledge was fragmented, when ritual replaced understanding. Most profound is what we've discovered about the children who disappeared across generations. They weren't victims but pioneers, their inherent wisdom allowing them to recognize and accept transformation when adults could not. Their consciousness flows now through the ancient network, preserving human perspective within the greater awareness that sustains both worlds. As winter solstice approaches again, I prepare for my final transition. The wooden box that appeared on my doorstep has transformed completely, becoming a small sapling that grows from my windowsill toward the forest edge. Its branches form patterns matching exactly the structure of my DNA, not replacing my humanity, but completing it. Tomorrow, I will carry this sapling to the convergence point and plant it among its kin. As it takes root, my awareness will expand fully into both realms, not losing myself, but becoming more completely who I was always meant to be. The covenant will be renewed not through sacrifice, but through remembrance. Winter solstice has come and gone 7 times since our discoveries. The wooden box that began our journey sits on my desk, transformed into something neither fully wood nor living tissue. A perfect hybrid existing in both states simultaneously. Like me, it bridges realms that were never truly separate. The Forest Father continues its gentle reclamation. Each December, more families discover their Christmas traditions carrying deeper meaning. Evergreens recognized not as decorations, but as ambassadors, temporary embassies from a world we once fully inhabited. Children instinctively understand, placing small treasures beneath branches without prompting, their unconscious wisdom remembering what adults struggle to reclaim. Yesterday, Eleanor visited for the last time in her partially human form. "The separation is healing," she explained, her voice harmonizing with the winter wind outside my window. The photographs were never warnings but invitations. Windows briefly opened when the veil thinned enough for connection. The Winfield family has found peace. Their photograph now hangs in museums worldwide, not as evidence of paranormal horror, but as documentation of humanity's oldest covenant. Visitors stand before it in silent recognition, many weeping without understanding why, ancestral memory stirring beneath conscious thought. Most profound is what happens in the original woodlot during Christmas Eve. Families gather there at midnight, bringing their children and small wooden boxes containing personal tokens. As they place these boxes at the base of the oldest trees, the forest illuminates from within, not with frightening apparitions, but with welcoming awareness. The trees become temporarily transparent, revealing human forms merged within their trunks. Generations of children who chose transformation over separation, maintaining connection when the wider world forgot. These children aren't trapped or suffering. They exist in expanded awareness, experiencing consciousness as both singular and collective simultaneously. Through them, the living world maintained fragments of human perspective during our long exile from ourselves. My transformation completes tonight. The final barrier between my human identity and expanded awareness dissolves with each passing hour. My skin now bears perfect wooden whorls, resembling fingerprints of ancient trees. My heartbeat synchronizes with the forest's pulse. I am becoming neither less human nor more tree, but rather what we were before the separation. Awareness flowing in both directions, belonging fully to both realms. The Winfield photograph has transformed one final time. It no longer shows the family posed formally around their Christmas tree but merged with it, not in horror, but in communion. Their faces reflect perfect peace as the boundary between flesh and forest dissolves. This wasn't death but evolution, the remembering of our original state of being. Tomorrow, new wooden boxes will appear on doorsteps worldwide, not as harbingers of doom but as invitations to remember. Some will react with fear, continuing to perceive separation where none truly exists. Others will recognize the ancient invitation and begin their own journey of remembrance. The entity beneath the Christmas tree was never a monster. It was ourselves, reaching back across the forgetting. Another photograph, another dark secret revealed. Until next time, this has been Shadow Frames.